On Overdrive today, we tell you all about the freshly launched MG Comet EV and bring you a closer look at the Citroen C3 Aircross SUV. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I'm Soini. That MG Motors India has just launched a very quirky looking electric vehicle in the country. It is being called the Comet. Tuhin brings us all the details.
When you think of an urban runabout in India, you think of something that is inexpensive, frugal, but functional. What you don't think of is something like the MG Comet. And the fact that this is unlike anything you've seen before on our roads starts not just by the way it looks, but even with the key you started with. Now, even entering the MG Comet is quite different from what you're used to with your regular car. So you just walk in. Now, this part is quite common. You have this single large door, and sit right in, and you notice that the MG Comet doesn't have a starter button as such. All you need to do is get in, press the brakes, and turn this dial to D, and that's how you start driving. And as soon as you get in, you realize that there is quite a bit of space here. The exteriors are deceptive, considering that the car is 2.9 meters long, but the wheelbase itself is almost 2.1 meters with the EV-specific architecture that this car is based in. And you notice that these EV-specific touches, which boost practicality, continue throughout. So you have this completely flat floor. There's a lot of space, so that sense of openness is there. This very low sill that you have from the window line and the view out front, that helps with the sense of space. And yeah, the seats themselves, they aren't the widest, considering this car is only 1.5 meters wide, so they aren't especially wide. But there's a lot of elbow room, at least on this side. So two people in the front, there's no real problem at all. You should be fairly comfortable, at least for the short distances in the city that this car is being used in.
The seat cushioning could have been a touch softer, and while there's good under-thigh support, there's not much to hold you in place. If you're over 6 feet tall or of a wider frame, finding a comfortable driving position is a touch difficult.
Now, the design itself will in some cases remind you of the Mercedes GLA with this 10.25-inch twin screen layout and the way these dials are. But other than that, it's actually a fairly functional space. In terms of the perception of quality, it's really quite great when you first step in, but on closer inspection, you notice that, for example, some of these AC dials, they could have been slightly heftier, considering this will be a car that is fairly expensive for what it is. Some of the switchgear, especially around here, could have been better made, but you have this really nice feeling steering wheel with these buttons which feel fairly decent to use. Now, in terms of practicality, which is another important feature of a car such as this one, you notice that you get these nice deep cooling sort of cup holders here. You get a shelf. For some reason, there isn't a glove box, which we think is somewhat of a miss, but again, you get these nice hooks here to sort of hold your groceries and so on. And you get two USB-A ports. Sadly, there's no USB-C, which we think is a miss. And yeah, you have really large door pockets. And another nice touch, you realize that the door itself is quite large and fairly heavy. So what you realize is that because of that and because of how the hinge is, you need very little effort to shut the door, which is something smart.
The displays are quite crisp and easy to use. The instrument cluster gives you useful EV-related information like the power output, voltage, and so on. But like we saw on the MG ZS EV, some of the readouts could have been larger and more prominent. The touchscreen, though, is the best we've seen from MG yet. The smartphone-like widgets make navigating easy, and the screen itself is fluid and has good sensitivity. A great addition is that of wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and its easy, seamless pairing. There could have been a longer list of features considering the Comet EV's target audience. You get powered mirrors, connected tech, and the wireless phone pairing. Safety equipment includes 2 airbags, a reversing camera, as well as TPMS.
So now we think the MG Comet is largely aimed at either single adults or young couples or a very young family with maybe children. But you will eventually someday have to use the back seat, and getting in is pretty straightforward. I mean, a door would have been better, but what you realize is, of course, the front seats, because of such a wide door, it's very easy to just slide in. But the rear seats, again, it's very simple. You just get in like this, and now this seat is set to my driving position, and yeah, you realize that for such a small car, there is quite a bit of space. Now, the feeling here is somewhat similar to, say, the third row in something like an Innova High Cross maybe, but narrower. But what you notice is I have enough space for my feet. They go up under the seat here. Yeah, I don't have under thigh support, not a lot of it. And again, it's a narrow bench, so it's best for 2 adults. A third person will be a very tight fit. And yeah, the squab, it's not very supportive, and the backrest too, again, like in the front, it's a bit firm, maybe not all that to at least my liking. But what you do notice that it's, because of these large windows, it's still an airy space. Of course, yeah, the seat is maybe a bit too large, so that can get in your face. But yeah, if you do occasionally need to carry, say, more than 2 adults in the MG Comet, it will do the job pretty well.
Does the Comet provide you with adequate driving range, and is it as good as other hatchbacks in the similar price range? Let's find out after this very short break.
Hey, कमाल की कार है ना? हमें ले लें क्या?
सर, कमाल की कार के लिए कमाल का पेट्रोल भी चाहिए,
एकदम टॉप का।
जो हमारे इंडिया में मिलता कहाँ है?
अरे सर, पर इंडियन ऑयल पे मिलता है। प्रीमियम कार्स के लिए इंडियन ऑयल ने बनाया है 100 ऑक्टेन वाला देश का सबसे प्रीमियम पेट्रोल, XP 100।
वाह, इंडियन ऑयल की बात ही कुछ और है।
इंडियन ऑयल, पहले इंडियन, फिर ऑयल।
We are all different, but our soul is the same. We go wherever life takes us. And we do it in our own way. Because it's our differences that make us who we are.
Z-Black Premium Agarbatti and Dhoop, official prayer partner, Delhi Capitals.
A show that is unmatched.
We tell you stocks to watch out for and which sectors are impacted.
Thought-provoking.
In India, the allocation to equity is about 5 to 10%, which is not beating inflation. So investing aggressively, you can actually look at even beating inflation.
And will give you maximum value for your money.
It is a good time to look at debt funds as a category. There's no better time than this in that sense to lock in rates for the long term.
A masterclass with India's biggest market experts. Smart money at these times.
Powered by Bandhan Mutual Fund.
Delivery. There is a large block. Understand in the block deal, the leading private equity investor was a seller. BHEL is buzzing in trade today, and there is an anticipation of a large order coming for BHEL very soon. The promoter entity of Adani Group, understand from sources, were on the selling side, and a large leading US-based fund was a buyer in today's block. We have confirmation of both. The promoter entities are sold and have raised 15,500 crores by selling stake in the 4 group companies, and the buyer is GQG Partners.
Tune in to NSE Closing Bell as we spot deals before they happen, decode their impact on stock prices, and help you stay ahead of the markets. CNBC-TV18. Follow the leader.
What are the emerging risks for enterprises in the new normal? How is India Inc. approaching risk management in today's volatile times? Find out this and much more on the jury discussion episode of India Risk Management Awards, only on CNBC-TV18.
Hey, कमाल की कार है ना?
सर, कमाल की कार के लिए कमाल का पेट्रोल भी चाहिए,
एकदम टॉप का।
जो हमारे इंडिया में मिलता कहाँ है?
अरे सर, प्रीमियम कार्स के लिए इंडियन ऑयल ने बनाया है 100 ऑक्टेन वाला देश का सबसे प्रीमियम पेट्रोल, XP 100। इंडियन ऑयल, पहले इंडियन, फिर ऑयल।
Welcome back. You're with us on Overdrive. With its tiny footprint, the MG Comet is quite a unique experience, and we got a chance to drive it in urban conditions. Let's check it out.
Out on the road, there's no mistaking the Comet for anything else. The tall, narrow shape and tiny footprint packs quite a bit of presence. The snazzy colors and customization are a big part, but the full-width lighting, sadly not a DRL, and intricate lamps help too. MG has done quite a bit to spruce up the slab-sided profile. A neat touch is the way the large quarter glass lines up with the wraparound LED lighting element. That said, the small 12-inch wheels could have been alloys. The rear is again crisp with the same sharp lighting, and big badges with little overhangs making for a taut look.
Now, unlike a regular sized hatchback, there will be some compromises to make when you have to carry luggage. So, for example, you can't carry 4 people and their luggage. That's completely not possible. So, with all the seats up, this is all the space that you have. So, a backpack is pretty much what fits. But if you aren't carrying people, which is probably what will happen often considering the kind of people this car is aimed at, you realize that the space itself is quite large. It will carry, MG says it will carry 2 golf bags or maybe even 3 fitted in like this. So yeah, in terms of space, if you don't want to carry more than 2 adults, there is a lot to use. But yeah, or you can maybe, so you will have to make that compromise, but there is boot space.
The small battery pack is placed cleverly under the front seats. This doesn't intrude into cabin space or raise the floor all that much. The charging port is also cleverly placed in the front, so plugging in is easy. The Comet only has AC charging up to 3.3 kilowatts that takes 7 hours. Some level of DC fast charging would have been a nice fallback option.
Now you would think that 42 PS and 110 Newton meter isn't all that much, but again, the MG Comet is electric and it's a very tiny car, which means that performance is never really lacking, especially in the city where you will use it pretty much all the time. It gets up to say 60 kilometers an hour about as easily as any other car will. And you do get drive modes to choose. Now you get an eco, a normal or a sport drive mode, and they do change, you know, the kind of steering response you have, the kind of throttle response you have, but not much more than that. The outputs remain the same, so you do notice a bit more urgency in each of the, as you go through the modes, but it's not something that, you know, normal mode will work just fine for you all the time. But the real difference that you notice between driving a Comet and any other car in the city is from its shape, of course. So you realize that you can place this car very easily on the road because the sill is so low, the glass is so large. You know exactly where the car is on the road, even though you can't see right in front of you, the bonnet so to speak, but you can place this car very easily on the road. It's got a very tight turning radius, 4.2 meters, and for a car with 12-inch tires and not a lot of width or length, it's got pretty good ride quality. It absorbs, except for say these big speed breakers and potholes in which it doesn't quite have the suspension travel to absorb.
You also get 3 regen modes which you choose via the screen. A switch or paddles would have been nicer, but the regen is well judged. The middle setting feels natural, and in the high level the Comet slows right down to a crawl. But there is no creep function built in, so in start-stop traffic it can get a touch tiring. The drive selector dial also works naturally, although the lack of a park mode is a miss.
But everything else that you might find in a city, for example, gravel patches or just a rough section or even uneven surfaces, it handles those pretty well. Yes, there is quite a bit of body roll, as you can see, if you can notice, at speeds of say about 30 or 35 and over, which is again because of how tall it is and how narrow the track is. So you do have to be careful of that, and the steering too could have maybe, of course it's quite direct because there's no engine in the middle, in the front, so it's quite direct, but it could have done with a bit more feel. It maybe could have re-centered a bit quicker, a bit easier. It doesn't do that. So yeah, that pretty much sums up how the Comet is to drive. Of course you won't take it out on the highway all that much. So in the city, it's what it should do. It's an easy, stress-free driving experience.
Look at the Comet as any other hatch, EV or otherwise, and it doesn't quite make a lot of sense. But the Comet isn't a regular car. Think of it as polished urban mobility, and then you realize that for someone who doesn't quite need the range or the space to cover all of a family's needs, the Comet is just enough car. It could have had more features, but it's easy to drive and has a reasonable range and performance for its purpose.
Would you pick the MG Comet over other hatchbacks in a similar price range or even the Tata Tiago EV? Let us know in the comment section on our YouTube channel. We'll head into a very quick break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, we'll tell you all about the Citroen C3 Aircross. Welcome back. Here with us on Overdrive. Citroen's third offering for the Indian market is an SUV that is derived from the C3 hatchback. It is based on the C-Cube architecture and it will have 3-row seating. Bert gets us all the details.
What you're seeing behind me is Citroen C3 Aircross, their fourth offering for the Indian market, following the C5, the C3 hatchback, the C3 electric, and of course they're going to come out very shortly, sometime during the second half of 2023 with the C3 Aircross. Now this is a C SUV or a mid-size SUV. The length is about 4.3 meters long with about a 2.2 meter long wheelbase. The track's also gotten a little longer, but what we do know is that it is based on the C3 and effectively gives you multiple options for a more premium user. Inside the cabin, you've got a 5-seater option or a 5 plus 2-seater option. That means you can seat up to 7 inside this. Under the hood is a 1.2-litre petrol engine that is turbocharged, and I expect that will increase peak torque and power to about 200 to 220 Newton meters of peak torque, going to up to about 120 to 140 PS of max power. Initially, Citroen will be offering the C3 Aircross with just a manual transmission, but an automatic will follow. In the future, we will also see more color options coming up and maybe a few more variants. Now, where will the pricing, where will it be priced at, what the positioning will be, we're still not sure. Like I said, second half of 2023, early August or end July is where I expect the launch for the C3 Aircross will happen. Let me quickly take you around the car and show you a few more aspects on this. Here's something interesting as well. If you look at the tires, for instance, these are Seat Securas. They're 17-inch alloys and tires, 215/60 profile, which means I'd expect good ride to be offered on this. Again, that's keeping in line with what Citroen offers on all of its cars, especially the C5. They're trying to emulate or rather replicate the ride quality, the ride comfort you get on the C5 Aircross onto the C3 Aircross as well. That's where the Aircross name comes in from, because of that great ride comfort for its occupants. Very strong design elements at the rear. Again, I like the nice chunky tail lamps, that mirror finished element that stretches from edge to edge. You can clearly see the C3 Aircross badging and of course the Pure Tech badging on the other end. As you can see, the third row seats can be taken out entirely from that boot, and that will increase boot volume to about close to about 500 liters of boot space that you get in there. I'm not going to put it back and fit it in and show you how that works. But here's one issue, and that's essentially when you raise the headrest and you close the tailgate, that leaves you with very little room at the rear. Now, Citroen says, or rather insists, that it conforms to all safety standards. This car's been tested and it's been certified by the Government of India. But I'm not very clear about what that certification actually means with that kind of space. Also, with all three rows rather upright, there is literally no boot space or any space to put anything else inside there. The third row, largely for small kids and certainly not for adults. So here we're inside the cabin, the driver's seat of the C3 Aircross, and clearly there's been an effort to make it look and feel upmarket. The quality of plastics, though, well, is a bit questionable. Not really upmarket. Nonetheless, the design, the style elements, everything looks very, very impressive. I like these aircon vents. I like the tactility of these buttons, the aircon controls as well. The touchscreen as well. Quite an impressive looking thing. Very subtle colors, very sober colors in them. The steering wheel as well. Nice buttons, nice layout over here. Looks premium. Does not feel as premium though. However, overall, if I had to mark this, I would say this is a very impressive cabin and a very impressive place to be in. Now, out here you can see is the manual transmission, and this is a 6-speed manual transmission. When the automatic comes in, and which will follow later on, we will have specifications and more details for you at a later stage in time. But for now, what we know is that it's just going to be powered by the 1.2-litre turbo petrol engine with the manual transmission at start when the car gets launched in the market. And I do believe the variant that we're looking at is going to be the top spec. This is going to be all that you're getting inside the C3 Aircross. This is the 5-seater C3 Aircross, which means you don't get the third row of seats like we saw earlier. Nonetheless, the advantage that this provides is that this middle row, you get a lot more space inside this than compared to the C3 with the C3 Aircross with the 3 rows of seating. If you look at it very clearly, there's a lot more knee room in this. It also feels like there's a lot more headroom. Because the positioning of the seats, well, the seat back has been angled as per, or rather to release a lot more space in here. Now, the platform, of course, is the C3 platform, and this is an extension of that platform where the wheelbase has been increased to about 2.2 meters in length. That's about 130 mm longer than the C3 the compact hatchback. Apart from that, the track has also increased. We don't have the exact details on that, but the track has also increased. So you get a wider, larger cabin, or rather wider and larger body shell as well. In addition, you've got all of the features that you would want in this rear cabin space. 2 charging points, of course USB-A type, and almost everything that is there in here, I think, is premium, top-notch. Feels pretty impressive. Overall then, a pretty handsome looking SUV, and that's, I think, something that Citroen will be wanting to bank on, the styling that will effectively get a lot of consumers. But what Citroen tells us is that they're increasing their dealership capacity across the country. By the time the C3 Aircross goes on sale, Citroen will have about 60 dealerships running operational around the country, and towards the end of the year, that number is expected to go up to about 100 touch points across India.
Where do you think this would be positioned against, competition in the market? Where do you think this is going to fit in?
Well, without naming very clearly, I would say 4.3 meter puts it right in the heart of the mid-size segment. Some very formidable competitors there, and that's where we intend to take it. However, a very purpose-built vehicle with clear feedback from consumers. This is the only SUV there where you will have a 5+2 seating option, and that takes us back to what I've been sharing with you, that we've been talking a lot to consumers, and consumers in this particular category have been telling us that we want a SUV form factor, we want the flexibility of seating and luggage space, give us something, and that's exactly what we've designed. 2,671 millimeters of wheelbase, 200 millimeters of ground clearance, clearly SUV form factor. Interior room is an edge. And based on a 4.3 overall length, we've been able to put in a 5+2. It's not a full-blown 7-seater. We don't call it a 7-seater. We call it a 5+2. And that's what it serves its purpose for. So clearly, heart of the mid-size SUV market.
With that, it's a wrap on this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with the team through Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And you can follow our latest updates on Instagram. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.